More than 200 guests filled the polished wooden pews inside. St. Andrew's Chapel in Charleston, South Carolina. Soft piano music echoed through the room. White roses lined the aisle. Everything looked perfect, except for one thing. The bride never came. I stood at the altar in my tailored navy suit, forcing a smile while everyone whispered behind me. My name is Noah Parker, and at 29 years old, I thought this was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Instead, it became the day that destroyed me. My fiancée, Sophia Reynolds, and I had been together for 6 years. We met during our freshman year at the University of South Carolina. She was studying marketing. I was studying civil engineering. She laughed at my terrible jokes. I stayed awake all night helping her finish presentations. We survived finals, internships, and the struggle of starting adult life together. When I proposed on Folly Beach at sunset, she cried before saying yes. I truly believed we'd grow old together. The wedding had cost nearly everything I had. I emptied my savings, worked overtime for months, even sold my grandfather's vintage Mustang to pay for the reception because Sophia had always dreamed of a waterfront ballroom. It'll be worth it, I kept telling myself. She's worth it. 10 minutes after the ceremony was supposed to begin, her maid of honor, Emily, walked toward me with tears in her eyes. She held a white envelope. I'm so sorry, Noah. My heart dropped. Where's Sophia? Emily couldn't answer. She simply handed me the envelope. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single handwritten letter. Noah, I'm sorry, but I can't marry you. This isn't the life I want anymore. I've met someone who can give me the future I've always dreamed about. Please don't try to find me. One day you'll understand. Sophia. I read it again. Then again. My mind refused to believe the words. The church became silent. Someone asked, Is everything okay? No one answered. My mother quietly began crying. My father placed a hand on my shoulder. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't even feel my legs. Then my best friend Jake rushed into the chapel holding his phone. Noah, you need to see this. He turned the screen toward me. A celebrity gossip website had already posted photographs. Sophia, standing beside Damian Sterling, one of the youngest billionaire real estate developers in America. The headline read, Billionaire Damian Sterling, spotted leaving private airport with new fiancé, hours before wedding, private jet, diamond ring, Paris. She hadn't just left me. She had left with him. The guests slowly began leaving. Some hugged me. Others avoided eye contact. The florist quietly packed away flowers that would never be used. The wedding cake remained untouched. 300 slices, made for a celebration that never happened. That evening, I sat alone in the empty reception hall. The staff cleaned around me. I stared at the dance floor where our first dance was supposed to happen. Jake finally broke the silence. What are you going to do? I looked at Sophia's abandoned bouquet lying on a chair. I honestly don't know. He sat beside me. You know what hurts the most? What? You loved someone who only loved the future she thought you could give her. Those words cut deeper than anything else. Because they were true. The next morning, social media exploded. Everyone had an opinion. Some called me pathetic. Others pitied me. News outlets focused on Sophia's glamorous new life with the billionaire. No one cared about the man left standing alone at the altar. I deleted every app, packed a suitcase, and drove away from Charleston without telling anyone where I was going. As the city disappeared in my rearview mirror, I made myself one promise. I would never chase someone who chose money over love. Instead, I would spend the next 5 years becoming someone I could be proud of. I had no idea that one decision would change my life forever. I drove for almost 12 hours before I finally stopped. The bright lights of Nashville, Tennessee stretched across the horizon. I had never planned to come here. I just kept driving until the memories became too painful to carry. My phone buzzed nonstop. Friends, family, reporters, even strangers who somehow found my number. I turned the phone off. For the first time in years, silence felt comforting. The next morning, I checked into the cheapest motel I could find. The room smelled like old carpet and stale coffee. The air conditioner rattled louder than it cooled. I looked around and laughed bitterly. 6 months earlier, Sophia and I had toured luxury honeymoon resorts in Italy. Now, I was living out of a suitcase. Life had a strange sense of humor. My savings were almost gone. After paying for the wedding, canceling vendors, and covering contracts that couldn't be refunded, I had less than $7,000 left. I needed a job. Fast. For 2 weeks, I applied everywhere. Construction companies, engineering firms, project management offices. Every interview ended the same way. We're impressed, but we're looking for someone with more local experience. The rejection emails piled up. My confidence disappeared. One rainy afternoon, I walked into a small engineering firm called Summit Structural Solutions. The receptionist smiled politely. "Can I help you?" "I'd like to apply for any engineering position." She looked through my resume. "You have excellent credentials." "I know, but no one's hiring." Before she could answer, an older man stepped out of his office. "What seems to be the problem?" The receptionist introduced him. "This is Mr. Benjamin Hayes, the company's founder." Benjamin picked up my resume. He read it quietly, then looked at me. "You graduated at the top of your class?" "Yes." "You've managed bridge restoration projects?" "Yes." He folded the resume. "So why is someone with your background asking for an entry-level position?" For a moment, I thought about lying. Instead, I told him the truth. My fiancé left me at the altar. I lost almost everything. I'm not looking for sympathy. I just want a chance. Benjamin studied me for several seconds, then smiled. "I like honest people. When can you start?" The salary wasn't impressive. The office was small. The projects were ordinary. But for the first time in weeks, someone believed in me. I threw myself into work. I arrived before sunrise, stayed after everyone left, volunteered for difficult assignments. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was trying to rebuild myself. Months passed. One Friday evening, Benjamin walked into my office. "Still here?" I smiled, trying to finish these bridge calculations. He placed 2 cups of coffee on my desk. "You remind me of myself 40 years ago. I hope that's a good thing." He laughed. "It depends who you ask." As we talked, he asked a question that caught me off guard. "Are you angry at her?" I stared out the window. I was. And now? I think I was more angry at myself. Why? Because I built my future around someone else's choices. Benjamin nodded. "That's a mistake a lot of people make." He stood up. "Build your future around your own character. Everything else can disappear overnight." Those words stayed with me. Over the next 3 years, Summit Structural Solutions grew rapidly. I led projects across Tennessee, Georgia, and Kentucky. Old bridges were restored. Schools were rebuilt. Communities trusted our work. Benjamin promoted me twice. By the end of my 3rd year, I was vice president of operations. Then something unexpected happened. A major infrastructure company offered to buy Summit Structural Solutions. The offer exceeded $300 million. Benjamin called me into his office. "I've decided to sell." I nodded. "You've earned it." He smiled. "I'm retiring." Then he slid a folder across the desk. "I want you to have this." Inside was an ownership agreement. He was giving me 20% equity in the company. I looked at him in disbelief. "I can't accept this." "You already have." "What do you mean?" "You earned it." 6 months later, the acquisition was complete. My share of the sale changed my life forever. After taxes, I became worth more than $48 million. The boy who had once worried about paying rent was now financially free. I bought a modest lakefront home, helped my parents pay off their mortgage, started a scholarship for engineering students, and quietly donated money to organizations that helped abandoned veterans and single parents. I never bought a private jet, never collected sports cars. I remembered exactly how it felt to lose everything. 5 years passed. The pain Sophia left behind slowly became a distant memory. One crisp October morning, my assistant walked into my office. "You've been invited to speak at the National Business Leadership Gala in Charleston, the city where my life had fallen apart." I smiled. "I think it's time I went home." As I signed the acceptance letter, I had no idea who else would be attending the gala. Sophia Reynolds, now divorced, financially ruined, and completely unaware that the man she had abandoned at the altar would be the keynote speaker everyone had come to see. 5 years. That was how long it had been since Sophia walked away from our wedding. 5 years since I had stood alone at the altar while she boarded a private jet with Billionaire, real estate mogul, Damian Sterling. Back then, I thought my life was over. Now I was flying back to Charleston, not as a heartbroken groom, but as the CEO of one of the fastest-growing infrastructure companies in the Southeast. Life had changed in ways I never imagined. The annual National Business Leadership Gala was being held at the historic Charleston Harbor Hotel. The ballroom overlooked the water where I'd once proposed to Sophia. The irony wasn't lost on me. As my driver pulled up to the entrance, flashes from photographers lit up the evening sky. My assistant Rachel smiled. Nervous? I adjusted my tuxedo. Not anymore. Inside, hundreds of executives, investors, and entrepreneurs mingled beneath crystal chandeliers. I greeted familiar faces, shook hands, and exchanged business cards. No one here knew the story of the man who had once been left standing alone in a church. To them, I was simply Noah Parker, the keynote speaker. An hour before my speech, I stepped onto the balcony overlooking Charleston Harbor. The cool ocean breeze reminded me of another night. Another promise. Another version of myself. You've changed. A familiar voice broke the silence. I slowly turned around. Sophia. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She looked almost the same. Beautiful, elegant. But there was something missing. The confidence she once carried had been replaced by quiet sadness. Noah. She gave a nervous smile. I almost didn't recognize you. I smiled politely. It's been a long time. She looked down at her hands. I heard you were successful. I didn't realize this successful. There was an awkward silence. Finally, she whispered, You look happy. I am. Those 2 words seemed to hurt her more than anger ever could. She took a deep breath. I owe you an apology. I nodded. You do. Tears filled her eyes. I was selfish. I thought money would solve everything. I thought Damian could give me the life I wanted. What happened? She laughed bitterly. The life I wanted turned out to be someone else's dream. She explained everything. Only 6 months after leaving me, she married Damian. At first, life felt like a fairy tale. Private islands, luxury yachts, fashion shows in Paris, celebrity parties, everything social media promised. But behind closed doors, Damian wasn't the charming billionaire everyone admired. He controlled every part of her life. Who she talked to, what she wore, where she went. Every decision required his approval. The expensive gifts slowly became golden chains. 2 years later, she discovered he had been unfaithful with multiple women. When she confronted him, he handed her divorce papers. The prenuptial agreement left her with almost nothing. The mansion wasn't hers. The cars weren't hers. Even the jewelry belonged to family trusts. The glamorous life disappeared overnight. I lost everything. She looked at me. No, I answered quietly. You lost everything 5 years ago. She understood exactly what I meant. I'm not asking you to take me back. She wiped away a tear. I know I don't deserve that. I just wanted you to know. You were the best man who ever loved me. For a moment, I remembered the young woman from college. The girl who laughed at my terrible jokes. The woman I'd planned to spend my life with. Then I remembered the letter she left on our wedding day. Some choices change everything. Before I could answer, the event host stepped onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome tonight's keynote speaker, Mr. Noah Parker. The ballroom erupted into applause. Sophia looked at me with surprise. You're the keynote speaker? I smiled. I guess life has a sense of humor. I walked onto the stage as hundreds of people stood to applaud. Among them, Sophia quietly took her seat in the back of the ballroom. I looked across the audience before beginning. 5 years ago, I believed success meant never failing. The room became silent. But life taught me something much more valuable. It's not failure that defines you. It's what you build after everything falls apart. Every word came from my heart. I spoke about resilience, integrity, second chances, and how pain can become the foundation of purpose if you refuse to let it make you bitter. By the time I finished, the audience rose to its feet in a standing ovation. As the applause echoed through the ballroom, I noticed Sophia wiping tears from her eyes. She wasn't crying because I had become wealthy. She was crying because she had finally realized what she had truly walked away from. But the biggest surprise of the night was still waiting. As I stepped off the stage, the chairman of the gala approached the microphone. "We have one final announcement. Noah Parker, in recognition of your leadership and generosity, we're honored to present you with the American Humanitarian Business Leader of the Year Award." The room erupted again. Sophia covered her mouth in shock. She had left an ordinary engineer for a billionaire, only to discover 5 years later that the man she abandoned had become not only richer, but far greater than money alone could ever make someone. The applause seemed endless. As I stepped down from the stage with the American Humanitarian Business Leader of the Year Award in my hands, dozens of business leaders came forward to congratulate me. "Outstanding speech. You inspired everyone tonight. We should talk about working together." I smiled and thanked each of them. 5 years earlier, I had walked out of a church feeling like the biggest failure in America. Tonight, I walked through a ballroom filled with people who respected me, not because of my money, but because of my character. As the crowd slowly dispersed, I noticed Sophia standing alone near one of the large windows overlooking Charleston Harbor. She looked like she wanted to say something. Instead, she quietly turned and walked away. I let her go. Some conversations had already reached their natural ending. Just then, Benjamin Hayes walked over carrying 2 glasses of sparkling water. "I've known you for 5 years, but tonight, I'm proud to call you my son." Those words hit me harder than any business award. Benjamin had never had children of his own. When he hired me after the wedding disaster, he hadn't just given me a job. He had given me a second chance. I hugged him. "I wouldn't be here without you." He smiled. "No, you'd still be successful. You just would have taken a little longer." A tall woman in an elegant navy dress approached us. "Mr. Parker?" "Yes?" She handed me her business card. "Evelyn Brooks, Chairwoman, Brooks Infrastructure Group, one of the largest construction companies in the United States. I've been following your work. Your bridge restoration projects are among the best in the country." "Thank you." She smiled. "I'd like to discuss a partnership." Benjamin raised an eyebrow. "This should be interesting." The next morning, we met in a private conference room overlooking the harbor. Evelyn placed several blue folders on the table. "Our company has secured federal approval for one of the largest infrastructure projects in decades." She opened the first folder. The estimated value nearly made me stop breathing. $4.8 billion. "We need someone we can trust to oversee engineering operations." She looked directly at me. "We want you." I stared at the proposal. 5 years ago, I had been sleeping in a cheap motel. Now I was being asked to help lead one of America's largest engineering projects. Life truly could change. "There is one condition," Evelyn said. I looked up. "If you accept, you'll become an equity partner." Benjamin nearly dropped his coffee. I couldn't speak. The opportunity wasn't just another promotion. It would place me among the most influential business leaders in the country. "I'd like 24 hours. Evelyn smiled. "Take all the time you need." That afternoon, I decided to walk through downtown Charleston alone. No meetings, no reporters, just memories. I passed the church where Sophia and I were supposed to marry. The doors were open. Without thinking, I stepped inside. The sanctuary was empty. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows. I quietly sat in the same pew where my parents had cried 5 years earlier. The silence felt different now. It no longer hurt. It healed. "I hoped I'd find you here." I turned around. It was my mother. She smiled warmly before sitting beside me. "I watched your speech last night. You made your father cry." I laughed. "He'll deny it." "He already has." For several minutes, we simply sat together. Then she asked, "Do you still hate Sophia?" I thought carefully before answering. No. Do you miss her? I shook my head. I miss the future I thought we were going to have. Not the person who walked away. My mother squeezed my hand. That's how I know you've truly healed. As we left the church, someone called my name. Noah! I turned. Sophia was standing across the street. She walked toward us slowly. She looked nervous. There was something I never told you. I waited quietly. The morning of our wedding. I almost came back. I frowned. What stopped you? She looked down. Pride. I thought if I admitted I made a mistake, I'd lose everything. She smiled sadly. The truth is, I lost everything anyway. I nodded. I hope one day you find happiness. She looked surprised. That's all? I smiled gently. What else is there to say? She wiped away another tear. I don't deserve your kindness. No, you don't. But kindness says more about me than it does about you. For the first time in years, Sophia genuinely smiled. Goodbye, Noah. Goodbye, Sophia. She walked away without looking back. And somehow, it finally felt like the last chapter had closed. The following morning, I signed the partnership agreement with Brooks Infrastructure Group. The deal made headlines across the country. Engineer left at altar, now leads multi-billion-dollar national project. But that wasn't the headline that meant the most to me. At the bottom of the article was a short paragraph. Noah Parker has pledged that a portion of his earnings from the project will fund scholarships for students pursuing engineering degrees whose families cannot afford college. Benjamin smiled as he finished reading it. I knew you wouldn't forget where you came from. I never will. Little did I know. The next chapter of my life wasn't about becoming richer. It was about meeting someone who would teach me that real love always arrives when you stop chasing the wrong person. The partnership with Brooks Infrastructure Group changed my career overnight. Within months, our company was leading projects in 6 states. News interviews became routine. Business magazines featured my story. People called me an overnight success. They had no idea it had taken 5 years of heartbreak, 14-hour workdays, and countless failures to become overnight. One Saturday morning, I decided to escape the endless meetings. Instead of another business conference, I drove to a small community park where volunteers were rebuilding a playground damaged by a tornado. I had quietly donated the construction materials. No reporters knew. No cameras had been invited. I wanted one day where I could simply work with my hands again, just like I used to. Children laughed as they painted wooden benches. Parents planted flowers around the new playground. An elderly veteran struggled to lift a stack of lumber. Before anyone else noticed, I walked over. Need some help? He smiled. I was hoping someone would ask. Together we carried the boards across the park. You've got strong hands, he laughed. I used to be an engineer. You still are. I know, but sometimes it's nice to remember where I started. As I reached for another beam, I accidentally bumped into someone carrying a bucket of blue paint. Splash! Paint covered both of our jeans. Oh no. A woman burst into laughter. I'm so sorry. I looked up. She had chestnut brown hair tied in a ponytail, bright green eyes, and paint across one cheek. Instead of getting angry, she couldn't stop laughing. I guess we're matching now, I joked. She smiled. I've definitely had worse first impressions. My name's Emma. Noah. She held out her paint-covered hand. I shook it anyway. Now both of us were covered in blue paint. The children nearby giggled. One little boy shouted, "Now you have to help paint." Emma laughed. I think he's right. For the next 4 hours, we worked side by side. We painted benches, installed swings, helped children build birdhouses. Not once did Emma ask what I did for a living. She never mentioned money, never asked where I lived. She simply treated me like another volunteer. It felt refreshing. During lunch, we sat beneath a large oak tree eating sandwiches. So, Emma smiled. What do you do? I build things. She laughed. That's the shortest job description I've ever heard. It's true. What kind of things? Bridges. Her eyebrows rose. You're an engineer? I am. I'm a third-grade teacher. Really? She nodded proudly. I've been teaching for 7 years. What made you choose that? She looked toward the playground. Because changing one child's future is worth more than any paycheck. I smiled. I like that answer. As the afternoon ended, Emma packed her backpack. It was nice meeting you. You too. She hesitated. I know this is forward, but would you like to get coffee sometime? I couldn't help smiling. I'd love that. She wrote her number on the back of a volunteer badge and handed it to me. No pressure. If you never call, I'll just assume you're afraid of losing another paint fight. Over the next several months, coffee turned into dinner. Dinner became weekend road trips. Road trips became long conversations about family, dreams, and second chances. One evening, Emma asked a question I had been expecting. Were you ever engaged? I nodded. Yes. What happened? I stared at the sunset. She chose someone else. Emma quietly reached across the table and held my hand. She didn't ask for details. She didn't criticize Sophia. She simply said, I'm sorry someone made you feel like you weren't enough. That simple sentence healed something inside me. I waited almost 6 months before telling Emma the truth about my life. Until then, she thought I worked as a senior engineer. Nothing more. One Friday evening, I invited her to the headquarters of Brooks Infrastructure Group. She looked at the massive glass building. Your office is nice. I smiled nervously. There's something I should tell you. We walked inside. Employees smiled. Good morning, Mr. Parker. Morning, sir. Emma looked at me with confusion. The receptionist stood. The board members are waiting for you, Mr. Parker. Emma slowly turned toward me. Board members? I nodded. I'm not just an engineer. She looked around the executive floor. What exactly do you do? I took a deep breath. I'm the CEO. Silence. She stared at me for several seconds. Then she laughed. I thought you were going to tell me something terrible. You already knew, she smiled. Noah, if you'd been driving an old pickup instead of a nice SUV, I still would have asked you to coffee. You made children laugh while carrying lumber. That's who I fell for. Not the title. Not the office. Not the money. Just me. A few weeks later, Benjamin invited us both to dinner. As we left the restaurant, he pulled me aside. I've watched you with Emma. I smiled. So? He looked directly into my eyes. She looks at you the way Sophia never did. She sees the man, not the lifestyle. I looked over at Emma, who was laughing with my mother while helping her into the car. For the first time since being left at the altar, I finally understood something. Losing Sophia hadn't been the worst thing that ever happened to me. It had made room for the best thing. But I had no idea that fate had one more surprise waiting. 3 months later, while shopping for an engagement ring, I would unexpectedly come face to face with Sophia one last time, and the conversation we shared would change both of our lives forever. 3 months after meeting Emma, I found myself standing inside one of Charleston's oldest jewelry stores. The same store where I had bought Sophia's engagement ring 6 years earlier. Life really did have a strange way of bringing people full circle. This time, I wasn't nervous. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was simply looking for a ring that reminded me of Emma. Simple, elegant, timeless. Just like her. An elderly jeweler smiled as he welcomed me. Looking for something special? I hope so. He unlocked a velvet display case. This collection was handcrafted by local artisans. One ring immediately caught my attention. A round diamond surrounded by tiny sapphire stones. Not flashy, just beautiful. Exactly like Emma. I'll take it. As the jeweler prepared the paperwork, the front door opened. A familiar voice froze me in place. Noah? I slowly turned. Sophia. She stood only a few feet away. She looked surprised. Then her eyes fell on the ring box in my hand. Her smile faded. She swallowed. Getting married? I nodded. I'm planning to ask her soon. For a moment, she simply stared at the ring. It's beautiful. She'll love it. I hope so. Sophia forced a small smile. I've started over too. Oh? I work at a nonprofit now. We help women leaving abusive relationships. I looked genuinely surprised. That's meaningful work? She nodded. It gave purpose to everything I went through. There was no bitterness in her voice anymore, only humility. She looked down before quietly asking, "Can I ask you something?" Of course. Did you ever hate me? I thought carefully. There was a time I did. And now? I don't. She looked relieved. I hated myself enough for both of us. The jeweler returned with the ring. As I signed the receipt, Sophia smiled. I guess she's very lucky. I shook my head. No, I'm the lucky one. She laughed softly. I finally understand that. Before leaving, she reached into her purse. I've carried something for years. She handed me a small white envelope. I think it belongs to you. Inside was a check, made payable to me, for the exact amount I had spent on our canceled wedding, including the deposits, including the reception, every penny. I know it doesn't erase what I did. It doesn't. But I wanted to make things right. I quietly folded the check, then handed it back. I don't want it. She looked confused. You earned it. No. I paid for a lesson, and it was worth far more than the money. Tears filled her eyes. If you really want to make things right, I continued. Donate it. Help someone who's starting over. Someone who doesn't have the opportunities we had. She nodded slowly. I will. I promise. 2 weeks later, Emma and I drove to the Blue Ridge Mountains for a weekend getaway. As the sun began setting over the valley, we stopped at a quiet overlook. The sky glowed orange and gold. Emma smiled. This is beautiful. So are you. She laughed. That was cheesy. I've been practicing. I reached into my jacket pocket. Emma noticed immediately. Her eyes widened. Noah. I knelt on one knee. 5 years earlier, I had stood at another altar believing love was about promises. Now I understood. Love was about showing up every day, choosing each other, even when life became difficult. Emma Carter? She covered her mouth. You taught me that kindness is stronger than heartbreak. You loved me before you knew my success. You believed in me when there was nothing to gain. I don't want a perfect life. I just want one with you. Will you marry me? Tears streamed down her face. She laughed and cried at the same time. Yes. Yes. Of course I will. I slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. When we returned home, my parents, Benjamin, and a few close friends surprised us with a small engagement celebration. Benjamin hugged Emma. I've been waiting for this day. Emma smiled. I guess I'm officially joining the family. Benjamin laughed. You became family the day you made Noah smile again. That evening, while everyone celebrated, my phone buzzed. It was a news notification. Damian Sterling's real estate empire, officially filed for bankruptcy protection after a federal fraud investigation. I stared at the headline for a few seconds. Emma noticed. What is it? I smiled and locked my phone. Nothing important. She looked curious. Aren't you going to read it? I shook my head. No. The past doesn't deserve another minute of our future. She leaned against my shoulder. I like that. As music filled the backyard and laughter echoed around us, I realized something. The greatest revenge wasn't becoming richer than the billionaire. It wasn't winning awards. It wasn't proving Sophia wrong. The greatest victory was finding someone who loved me for who I was, long before she knew what I had become. But our biggest celebration was still ahead. Because 6 months later, I would stand at another altar. This time, the bride would be waiting for me. 6 months passed in what felt like the blink of an eye. Life had never been busier. Brooks Infrastructure Group had expanded into 3 new states. The Parker Engineering Scholarship Foundation had already helped more than 100 students attend college. Every weekend, Emma and I volunteered at schools and community projects. No cameras, no publicity, just people helping people. It reminded me of the kind of life I had always wanted. One evening, Emma and I sat on the porch of our lake house watching the sunset. She leaned her head against my shoulder. Can I ask you something? Always. Why didn't you want a huge wedding? I smiled. Because I already learned that expensive weddings don't guarantee happy marriages. She laughed. I guess that's true. I don't need a ballroom. I just need you. She squeezed my hand. Then let's make it simple. Instead of inviting 500 guests, we invited only the people who had stood beside us through life's hardest moments. My parents, Benjamin Hayes, a few close friends, Emma's parents and her former third-grade students. Less than 80 people. It felt perfect. The ceremony was held at a small lakeside chapel in Tennessee. Wildflowers lined the aisle. A local guitarist played soft acoustic music. Children from Emma's class handed out white roses to the guests. There were no celebrities, no reporters, no extravagant decorations. Only love. As I waited at the altar, Benjamin adjusted my tie. "You look nervous." "I am." He smiled. "Good. It means you understand what you're about to promise." I nodded. This time I wasn't afraid of being left behind, because real love had never made me wonder if I was enough. The chapel doors slowly opened. Everyone stood. Emma walked down the aisle wearing a simple ivory dress. She wasn't covered in diamonds. She wasn't arriving from a private helicopter. She simply smiled at me with tears in her eyes. And in that moment, she was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. When she reached me, she whispered, "You still have blue paint on one of your shoes." I looked down and laughed. Sure enough, a tiny blue paint stain from the day we first met was still there. "I guess it brought me luck." She smiled. "I hope you never clean it." The minister began the ceremony. Then came the vows. I looked into Emma's eyes. Years ago, I believed love was about finding someone who would never leave. I was wrong. It's about finding someone who chooses you every single day. "I promise to choose you on the easy days, on the difficult days, and on every ordinary day in between." Emma wiped away tears before reading her vows. "Noah, you taught me that strength isn't measured by success. It's measured by kindness after heartbreak. I promise that no matter what life brings, you will never face it alone again." There wasn't a dry eye in the chapel. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." The applause filled the room. For the first time in my life, I understood what peace truly felt like. The reception took place outside beneath strings of warm lights. Children danced barefoot on the grass. Benjamin gave the first toast. When Noah walked into my office 5 years ago, I thought I was hiring an engineer. He smiled at me. What I really found was the son I never had. I stood and hugged him while everyone applauded. Later that evening, my mother handed me a small gift. Inside was the old wedding invitation from the ceremony that never happened. I looked at her in surprise. "I kept it," she said softly. "Not because of the pain, but because it reminds us how far you've come." I smiled, then walked over to the outdoor fireplace. Emma stood beside me. "What are you thinking?" I held up the invitation. "I think it's time to let go." Together, we placed it into the fire. The paper curled into ashes. So did the last piece of the past I had been carrying. As the night came to an end, I stepped outside for a breath of fresh air. A black SUV pulled quietly into the parking lot. A woman stepped out. Sophia. She stayed near the entrance, not wanting to interrupt the celebration. I walked over. "I wasn't sure if I should come," she said. "I only wanted to say congratulations." She handed me a small wrapped package. Inside was a handcrafted wooden picture frame. Carved into the bottom were the words, "May the love you found last forever." "Noah," she whispered, "thank you for teaching me that forgiveness is possible." I smiled warmly. "I hope you find the happiness you're looking for, too." She nodded, smiled through her tears, and quietly walked back to her car. This time, watching her leave didn't hurt. It simply felt like saying goodbye to an old chapter. As I returned to the reception, Emma slipped her hand into mine. "Everything okay?" I looked around at our family, our friends, and the life we had built together. Then I smiled. "Everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be." Little did I know, 1 year later, an unexpected knock on my front door would bring a surprise that neither Emma nor I could have imagined, a surprise that would complete our family forever. 1 year after Emma and I were married, life felt wonderfully ordinary. Every morning we drank coffee together on the porch overlooking the lake. She left for her third-grade classroom. I headed to the office. On weekends, we volunteered, visited our parents, and worked on restoring an old farmhouse we'd recently purchased. It wasn't a perfect life. It was something better. It was peaceful. One rainy Saturday morning, someone knocked on our front door. Emma opened it. Standing there was a social worker holding the hand of a little girl who couldn't have been older than 7. The child clutched a worn stuffed rabbit. "Mr. and Mrs. Parker?" "Yes. I'm sorry to arrive without much notice. My name is Linda Morales with Tennessee Child Services." She looked down at the little girl. "This is Lily." Emma knelt to Lily's level. "Hi, sweetheart." Lily gave a tiny wave but didn't speak. Linda explained.
Lily's grandmother passed away last week. She has no immediate family willing to take custody. Emma's eyes filled with tears. "And?" Linda hesitated. "Your names were recommended by one of the volunteers at your scholarship foundation. They said you've helped many children over the years. We're looking for a temporary foster family." Emma looked at me. I already knew what she was thinking. Without saying a word, I nodded. For what was supposed to be one weekend, Lily came to stay with us. The first few days were difficult. She barely spoke. She had nightmares almost every night. She apologized every time she asked for food. One evening, she quietly whispered, "I'm sorry for taking up space." Emma immediately hugged her. "Oh, sweetheart, you never have to apologize for existing." I turned away for a moment so she wouldn't see the tears in my eyes. Weeks turned into months. Slowly, Lily began to smile. She loved pancakes with blueberries. She adored reading adventure books. She insisted on helping me in the garage every Saturday morning. One afternoon, she proudly held up a crooked birdhouse we'd built together. "It's not very good." I smiled. "It reminds me of the first one I ever made." "Really?" "It was even worse," she giggled. "Then maybe I'll become good someday." "I know you will." One evening, Emma found me watching Lily sleep on the couch after she'd fallen asleep during movie night. "You're thinking about something." Nodded. "I never imagined I'd love a child who wasn't mine." Emma smiled softly. "I don't think she feels that way anymore." "What do you mean?" She handed me a folded piece of paper. It was one of Lily's school assignments. "My hero." In careful handwriting, Lily had written, "My hero is Noah because he fixes things that are broken. Sometimes he fixes bridges. Sometimes he fixes birdhouses. Mostly, he fixed my heart." I couldn't hold back my tears. Several months later, Linda visited again. She smiled as she watched Lily laughing in the backyard. "I've rarely seen a child recover this quickly." Emma squeezed my hand. Linda opened a folder. "I have one question." We both looked at her. "Would you consider adopting Lily?" Silence filled the room. Emma looked at me. I looked toward the backyard where Lily was chasing our golden retriever. Then I smiled. "I thought you'd never ask." The adoption hearing took place 3 months later. Unlike the wedding I'd once lost, this was a day built on hope. The courtroom was filled with friends, family, Benjamin, my parents, and even several of Emma's students holding handmade signs that read, "We love you, Lily." The judge smiled warmly. "Lily, do you know why you're here today?" She nodded shyly. "I'm getting a forever family." There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. The judge signed the final papers. I officially declare Lily Parker the legal daughter of Noah and Emma Parker. Lily ran straight into our arms. "I love you, Mom."
"I love you, Dad." Those 2 words were worth more than every business deal I'd ever signed. That evening, Benjamin pulled me aside during the celebration. You spent years believing the greatest day of your life would be your wedding." He looked toward Lily, laughing with Emma. "I think today proved you were wrong." I smiled. "You're right." Months later, our foundation expanded again. This time we launched the Second Chance Family Initiative, helping foster children find permanent homes and supporting families willing to adopt. Every success story reminded me of my own, not because I had been abandoned, but because I had learned that family isn't defined by blood, it's defined by love. One autumn afternoon, Emma and I visited the church where I had once stood alone at the altar. Lily skipped ahead of us, chasing falling leaves. Emma slipped her hand into mine. "Do you ever think about that day?" I smiled. "Sometimes." And I looked at my wife and daughter. "I'm grateful." She laughed. "Grateful? If Sophia hadn't walked away, I never would have met you. I never would have become the man I needed to be. And Lily wouldn't be running through those leaves right now." Emma kissed my cheek. Funny how life works. It really is. As the sun began to set, Lily ran toward us. She grabbed both of our hands. Come on, we're a family. Emma laughed. We sure are. Walking together beneath the golden autumn trees, I finally understood the lesson life had been trying to teach me all along. The woman who left me at the altar thought she was choosing a better future. In reality, she walked away from it, because true wealth was never measured by billions of dollars, luxury homes or private jets. It was measured by the people waiting for you when you came home. And as I looked at Emma and Lily smiling beside me, I realized I was the richest man in the world. The end. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, share this video with someone you love, and leave a comment telling us what part moved you the most. Your support helps us create more heartfelt stories that remind us all that family is built with love, kindness, and the courage to stay